What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Black Top Podcast. I'm with my boy Ruben, and as you can see, we're two-man gaming it today. Christian had a friend's birthday, I believe. So first of all, happy birthday to Christian's friend, whoever you are. But it has been an eventful couple days, hasn't it, Ruben?
You already know, dude. My phone's blowing up with all the Twitter
No
notifications, dude.
doubt. I was in class today, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really pay attention because I was just like, I just had my phone on, waiting for that Woj tweet or whatever. But we are heading right into kind of the bulk of the off season, in that this is where free agency is about to open. We're past the draft, and been a bunch of trades happening. Undoubtedly, there's going to be more, but let's quickly talk about the draft. Ruben and I are fans of I was about to say the Rockets, the Raptors, and the Bucks. So obviously, we weren't like Orlando or the Thunder with the million picks that they have, but we did have guys that our team selected. So first of all, Ruben, how you feeling about 6'11"? I don't know, the center, straight out of Cameroon, Christian Koloko. How you feel about the man?
He's a great pick. I think he wasn't expected to drop to the second round, and I think the number one thing was because he's had a late development into basketball, very similar to Pascal Siakam. He's 22, so that typically a lot of teams who are looking, obviously to the draft are looking for the young prospects that they can develop for 4 years, and then by their fourth year in the NBA, they're 22. So Christian Coloco's got that's the only con to him at 22. Hence why most of these guys who are 4 years in college don't typically go very high in the draft. Like Coloco is like the prototype prospect for the style of play that the Raptors want to play. Is he's big, he's at 7'1", his wingspan is crazy, 7'6". He's a really versatile athlete. He's got quick feet. Nick Nurse said it in his post draft availability is his ability to be able to guard on the open floor, especially when it comes to screen and roll. They can still keep that style of play when they want to switch. So I think that defensively he's going to have a lot of upside already, and I think that he'll be a contributor right off the bat. On the offensive end, he's got a lot of skills to develop, but you're already liking what you see because he's a good finisher on the rim. He's really good on the screen and roll. Like I said, he's an athlete that jumps out of the gym, and he's got a really good jump shot already. If I'm not
Oh
mistaken,
yeah,
he
I
shot over
saw
sixty
some.
percent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that, and I saw some footage of him shooting jumpers out of just the roll, the screener roll.
yeah, yeah, and it's very Serge Ibaka-esque, and so that's a player that they've kind of missed at the center position for a little bit. So if Koloko can add those dimensions to the roster, considering his size and his defensive ability, I really like this pick. I wasn't expecting him to go down to 33, where he did. I thought that he was going to be a late first, but glad he ended up falling to the Raptors, and it's a very Masai Ujiri pick.
100%. I mean, last time they took someone out of Cameroon, it turned out pretty well, I will say. Do you think
Exactly.
he, do you think
Yeah.
he cracks the rotation right off the bat?
I think he'll spend a lot of time in the G League back and forth. So I think he'll crack the rotation. I think he'll spend quite a bit of time in the G League early on. But I think that he'll be able to crack out a rotation just because of his size and his athleticism, defensive ability. Like, if anything, if you see how raw Precious Achua was this year and then his development throughout the year, I think Christian Coloco will mirror a lot of that the development journey that Precious Achua had. So I think he can crack the rotation. But I also see him being like a part-time player up and down with the G League, which is fine because I think there's a lot of things he still needs to develop. I did see someone tweet that he looks like or not looks like it. His game, his Toronto basically drafted Evan Mobley number two. So I find that quite interesting if that's the fact. Because I wouldn't be mad if he ends up turning out to be anything that Evan Mobley is, who looks like what he's going to be a really good player. I'll be happy about that pick. Truthfully, I didn't watch a whole lot of Arizona this year. Just watched his highlights, but he looks good from what I've seen. He's and great athlete. And I think he just fits perfectly to what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a legit center now.
Finally, a guy over 7 feet tall. Like it's actually nice.
Yeah, no, that I think it's gonna show up to be a good thing. I think genuinely this draft was a lot of good players in this draft. There's a lot of guys that have a lot of.
It was. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of potential, at 24th overall, I truly think the Bucks got it. Marjon Beauchamp, he's coming out of the G League Ignite. And guys, Jalen Green. Jonathan Kuminga had a bunch of bright spurts when Draymond went down and champion. Isaiah Todd, I don't think he really played that much for the Wizards this year, but if there's one thing the G League Ignite players or kind of that whole program has shown, it's that it truly is another avenue outside of college. It's not that I don't think it was ever kind of going to be like a 1 year like kind of scratch off thing, but what we've truly seen is that having these guys play against pro players right off the bat compared to waiting that year around college where you're playing good competition, no doubt, but maybe every other game you're playing an NBA prospect or whatever, whereas now you're playing whether it be guys like Quinn Cook who spent a lot of time in the G League, Jordan Bell, a lot of guys who have that NBA pedigree and that NBA experience. And I think it's showing up to be a very successful project so far. And I think Marjon Beauchamp's going to be another guy that speaks to that success. I've been watching nothing but Marjon Beauchamp like interviews and highlights since that draft night. Man was emotional. Guy says God never gave up on me. He's wearing zero because he came from nothing. He's coming from when, in my opinion, is another one of those really, really well founded, well versed, and very deep basketball cities in Seattle, or in more so Washington State as a whole. I believe he went to Rainier Beach for a bit, which y'all don't know. Dejounte Murray, Kevin Porter Jr., Jamal Crawford, Zach Levine, I believe, is from the Seattle area. There's a lot of NBA talent coming out of there, and Marjon Beauchamp's got next. 6'6", 7-foot wingspan, and you can tell that he really does care about the defensive end. So I think that's really what went into the bulk of his selection for the Bucks. Because I mean, while Game 7 might not have showcased that, the Bucks have obviously always been a very defense first team. Budenholzer's always a coach that's always prided himself on defense, and that's really how you get the PT. So Marjon Beauchamp's going to be that guy. I mean, in the locker room, he's situated between Drew Holiday and Giannis. I think just all the signs are kind of pointing towards that. Not necessarily he's going to be like the successor. I'm not saying that at all, but it's just another player that they're going to be able to pair alongside Giannis as he's about to enter like the prime of his career. I'm excited. I mean, all the signs are pointing towards, people saying he can't shoot, but here's not necessarily a hot take, but when it comes to like the G League Ignite guys, I'm not necessarily putting so much emphasis on their like shooting splits as much as I would say like a guy who plays in a more controlled environment. Because I mean, as great as the G League Ignite program is, at the end of the day, I don't want to say it's like a glorified like exhibition team, but it kind of is in that sense. They don't play in the regular G League season; they play in like Showcase Cup or whatever it's called. So you're not necessarily like you are playing pro competition, but you're not necessarily getting that pro season, I guess. So I'm not holding that too much against him, but when it does come to like the good parts of his games that I saw in the highlights, great defender, has the ability to jump out the gym kind of thing, and he compares himself to Mikal Bridges, and that's a guy who he really like as he models and like watches a lot of. And Mikal Bridges is showing why like wings I think are becoming like best premium in the NBA to have on your team. Bucks call themselves another wing, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I got the chance to watch a bit of Marjan Beauchamp too, and I really like his game. The one thing that I do want to say when it comes to analyzing these athletes who are playing for the Ignite team is when you play for an NBA team, you're typically playing for a team that understands like their peg, their roles, right? You're pegged into a system. These guys are this is your star. These are your role players. This is the role they're fulfilling. In college, you play within a system more often than not, right? A developed system that's been around for how many ever years. And so while college has developed in a sense where now it's starting to mimic a little bit more of the pro game, more most of the time the seniors still have that seniority, obviously, for like I just said, there's a coach who's been there for so many years. There's an established program that you just kind of have to follow suit. When these guys are playing for the Ignite, every single one of them are trying to put on a show. And so
Yeah,
that has an effect on, your possessions, your ability to perform, the sharing the basketball. Like every guy on the Ignite team is trying to make a roster, essentially, right? It's like the G League. It's in the G League. Guys in the G League are all just trying to perform well individually so that they can get a call up. And it's the same thing for the Ignite. These guys are trying to look good so that they can get drafted. So that does have an effect on your stock, and that does have an effect on what your numbers look like ultimately when it comes around to draft season. But if a guy looks like he has those qualities and those intangibles on the court, more often than not, like you don't need a whole lot of 30 shots. You don't need 40 minutes of playing time to see that. And Marjan Beauchamp, Jalen Green, Jonathan Kaminga, those guys weren't crazy performers even last year, right? But like they did. Like they showed how much potential they have, and that's why they're on rosters today, and that's why Marjan Beauchamp got drafted to the Bucks. Simply because like they have those intangibles that you can see on the court. So I mean, I know people want to be like, oh, the shooting splits and all the numbers and all that stuff. Again, I'm someone who does believe in the analytics, but I don't think it always speaks the true story, and you have to understand what it is from behind the scenes. But yeah, I think this is a great pick. I'm a big fan of Marjan Beauchamp, right? So like I think this is again, I think the Bucks have done really good, really well with drafting as of late. They had Nwora last year, right? I think that kid is solid. And this year they have Beauchamp, so I think they've been really underrated in the draft the last year or two.
no, no. Yeah, I mean, I think just off the fact that he's a very well versed defender already, I think he's going to crack the rotation. I think he'll spend a little bit of time, obviously, in the G League, considering as it is right now. I think the starting lineup and kind of the first few players off the bench that with obviously Bobby's going to hopefully come back into that 6 man role if Brook is healthy. But yeah, no, Marjan Beauchamp he's gonna be a good addition to this team. And then we also I'm pretty sure at least we traded for the last pick, or 58th pick, considering Miami and Bucks had to forfeit their picks. Hugo Bassan. I mean, 58th pick. Is he gonna be the next Isaiah Thomas? Probably not. But what I saw, the dude's a great buck. But I guess last little thing before we get into real part of the offseason, where men are being traded around and stuff. Who would you say is the rookie that you're most forward to?
Honestly, it'll probably be Chet Holmgren. It'll probably be Chet Holmgren because number one, he looks like just with his skills at his size. Like the last time we saw a guy like that was KD, but Chet does have a size advantage on KD. So that'll be interesting to see where he falls in, especially with his lack of weight. He's talked a lot of mess coming into. I mean, he hasn't even played an NBA game yet or a summer league game, and he's talking about he's going to be the best player
In
in the
six
NBA in
months.
two
Yeah,
months.
yeah. I respect that.
So I'm excited to see him play. I really like him beside Shea and our old Giddy over there. So yeah, I'm really excited to see him. I like Banchero. I like what's the name? Uh Homeboy from Auburn.
Oh,
Jabari
Jabari
Smith.
Smith Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that kid a lot. I really like Hardy.
Jaden Hardy.
Yeah, I like that kid a lot. Um, Obviously the Raptors picks, but yeah, Chet Holmgren was going to be an interesting one to see how he fares with the NBA size and the NBA speed right away. Because if he looks like he can dominate, or if he looks like he belongs here right away, I think it's trouble for the league. Because like I don't, I what is he 7'1", 7'2"?
7-1 from what I read. Yeah.
Yeah, and the dude can do everything on the court. So I mean, I'm excited to see how he looks, and also Loki that Slim Towers thing that they were talking about with the other dude in OKC. Um,
Oh
that's
yeah,
gonna be fun to
Poku.
watch. Yeah, Poku. Yeah, Pokushevsky.
Sure.
I'm excited to see him. How about you?
uh yeah, I think off the bat, Jaden Hardy I think is gonna have a chance to be a big game changer, especially if that short guard who we'll talk about later does end up moving on. I think he's gonna be able to not necessarily start right away, but Jaden Hardy's a bucket. He has the ability
Yeah,
to like get his shot off like anywhere, and he's another guy where I think analytics should definitely play a role in a sense, but I think him slipping this far, it's gonna be a reason, and like yeah, just a reason why while analytics I think are very useful, it shouldn't be the be all end all. But another guy or another two guys, I mean, number one, Jaden Ivey. I think him and Cade are gonna be a very dynamic backcourt. We'll talk about the Pistons later with like the moves they're making, and then the last one is I'm gonna show some Canadian love here. Benedict Mathurin. I think
yeah,
him and Tyrese is gonna be a crazy young backcourt for the future, just with like the size each of them have. Tyrese is what 6'5",
yeah,
something like that. Benedict Mathurin, I think he's like 6'7", and obviously he's kind of been in the headlines for like kind of viewing LeBron as a mortal in a sense. I think it's like the way I'd like summarize it. So
yeah.
kid's got the confidence.
I'm gonna throw in one more name, Andrew Nemard, who I wanted on Toronto so bad.
The Canadian,
I
yeah.
want, I Yeah, I think he's gonna be fun to watch. I'll definitely be watching his career really closely because I watched him. I've watched him several times for Team Canada when I got to cover them. He is a freaking awesome player, one of the most headiest players that I've seen live, especially for his age. Because I saw him when he was 17, and he was playing on the senior team. So you know what I mean. Like this dude is kills. I badly wanted him on Toronto because that would have been nice to shore up that
He's
guard depth
another
with a
big
player like
guard,
him.
isn't he? He's like,
6'5".
yeah.
Yeah, he's a really good. Yeah, he's got every tool in the bag. He's a really good heady defender. He's one of those guys that you could say he's a coach on the floor. So it'll be exciting to see his career pan out. It's just I'm a little bit pissed that he didn't end up falling to because that's who they wanted. Masai, or sorry, yeah, Nick Nurse had talked about a little bit that that's who they were looking at 33 because it was either a center or a guard depth that they needed. At least they were able to address one of those issues, but you know, can't have every Canadian on the Raptors.
All right, let's transition a little bit. So, former five-time All-Star Dougie extraordinaire John Wall has agreed to, and upon clearing waivers, the consensus and kind of overall belief is that he will join the Clip. Ruben, what do you think about?
Number one, I like it a lot. I
Yeah,
like
me
it a
too.
lot because, again, that's really good guard depth that they get. If he's healthy and plays at a level that I think the closest thing we have to is when his first season in Houston, when he was averaging 21 and 7. Obviously inefficient, but he was playing with a really crappy roster. Now he's playing with guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and people forget how creative of a playmaker John Wall is, especially off the dribble. His ability to create space, his ability to break down a defense off the top, his ability to drive and kick, and obviously all that type of stuff. Finish around the rim, defensively, he's really good. We all know how that is. But at age 30 now, like, is he going to have that same explosiveness? Right, that's always going to be the question when you come off injury, or you haven't played for a while. But I love it because of the fact that the Clippers guard depth is really is not good, right? Like who's their next best guard outside of Reggie Jackson? like Luke Kennard.
Percent.
Luke
Greatest shooter
Kennard's
since Larry Bird.
he's a great shooter, but dude, your guard depth is so important, especially if you're going to be playing heavy wing minutes for guys like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and then when you have guys who kind of need shot creation for them, Norman Powell and Robert Covington, those guys are going to need shot creation for them. And a guy like John Wall does that. And can you imagine how deadly a backcourt combo of Reggie Jackson, John Wall is beside Paul George and Kawhi Leonard?
That's all I've been thinking about since that news came out. It'd be
And
disgusting.
they just re-signed. They just
Oh,
extended
Vicha Zubac,
Zubac.
3-year, 33, I think.
So I mean, that's your starting lineup right there, right? So I mean, I like the move. I love the move because you take a flyer, and if it doesn't work out, you signed him for a really. You're signing him for, if I'm not mistaken, a vet minimum, right? So
Has to be, yeah.
yeah. So if it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. It's not like you dropped $1 million. It's not. Well, you are dropping $1 million, but you're not dropping the whole
That, that's
bag for
that's
John Wall,
pennies.
right? Exactly. So I love the deal. I don't think there's anything negative you can say because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. This team is still a contender with or without John Wall.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the only thing I think I really have to add is that people forget that John Wall was an all-star for 5 straight.
Yeah.
That means for like half of a decade was that dude when it came to like guard position. And even if he's like 60 to 70% of the player that he was, because obviously, I think he tore his Achilles and like he had an ACL thing. Like it was like a very Klay Thompson like thing where getting back from like the first thing and then had another. But
He could have played last year, but
oh
they
yeah, he
just
decided to
decided
sit
not
out.
to play.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine.
No, that's understandable considering that I think they wanted him to come off the bench if he were to play. But John
Yeah.
Wall's a dog. Dude deserves to be a. But
Hmm.
when he's at his best, and when we've seen him at his best, it's when he's kind of the player to like primarily game plan for. Obviously, you had guys like Brad. But he's never really been in a situation where there are two guys who have like so much gravity towards them with like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So I think he's gonna have a lot of chances for easy baskets. He's not really gonna get a lot of looks with Mikal Bridges or like Drew Holiday's defending him. I think he has a chance to have a really good bounce back season, like similar to how Clay had a very solid like bounce back season. I'm just excited to watch John Wall ball again, man. It's gonna be,
Yeah,
it's good.
he's definitely he was one of my favorite players to watch when he was in his prime. Um, so yeah, I hope he finds his way back, and I am actually low key rooting for the Clippers a little bit because I do like that team as much as
Mm.
people hate to admit it. So
Paul George used to be my guy when he was on Indiana. Still love the man. I think the
the
Clippers
fact,
are gonna make some noise.
yeah, the fact him and John Wall on the same team now is it's fun. You never thought that back in like 2013
Oh
that you could
yeah.
see Paul George and John Wall on the same team together. So
I mean,
this will
like
be fun.
99% of the things, if you went back, to 2013 and told him, yeah, this scrawny dude who has fucked up ankles, gonna be one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
This kid that can't stay on the floor, that
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
shoot, but that's about
That's
it.
true. And he ends up being one of the best players of all time, if
Mm,
not like on their Mount Rushmore. So,
dang.
you know.
Right, next trade we gotta talk about. I love the way that this this page underdog underscore NBA worded it. The Pistons get Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks, 2 second-round picks, and $6 million, while the Knicks they get the rights to overpay Jalen Brunson. Second part of that, we'll talk about that in a bit. But from the Pistons side, I think this is a stellar deal. I think it really shores up that veteran presence that one they lost with the loss of Jeremy Grant, and two, I think is something that is so oftentimes overlooked when it comes to having those really young rosters. We saw the difference Chris Paul made when he went to that really young Oklahoma City team, and not saying Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks is going to have that kind of effect, but Nerlens Noel, I think, is a guy that'll really be able to make a difference to the development of a guy like Jalen Duren or an Isaiah Stewart. And Alec Burks, he's that 6'6" wing with a decent wingspan. I think Cade's gonna be in his ear a lot. Aiden Ivy's gonna have a chance to pick up a few things here and there, and Sadiq Bey obviously. And here's a hot take: I think the Pistons are gonna be in the play-in coming season. When you look at the roster they're assembling, Cade is hopefully gonna take another step. Sadiq Bey had a career year last year. Isaiah Stewart's one of the scrappier guys in the league. They got Jalen Duren for pennies on the dollar kind of thing.
That was crazy.
I
That was
know.
crazy. That was crazy.
They literally went from what are you doing to whoa, y'all did that in the matter of a day. And the way
They've
this
got Ivy
roster's
and
put
Duran
together,
on their team.
I know.
Like
I mean,
they had an A+ draft, bro.
100%. Obviously we were gonna talk winners and losers because everybody's talked about that, but it's not even a debate who won this year. Pistons are showing up to be a squad.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And even if they don't make a play in this year, I think they're going to take the step in the right direction. They've got pieces now, right? And so Cade Cunningham, Duran, Ivy, Bay. They've got what's the name? Obviously Isaiah Stewart. Missing a few names here that just kind of
I think
having a brain
Killian
fart.
Hayes has a chance to be a decent backup. No, I.
I'm gonna stay silent on
Would you
that one.
take? Let me ask you this: are you taking Killian Hayes or Saban Lee?
Neither of those dudes.
But if you had to, you're
Oh
taking.
man,
Is
I'll
this
take I'll take Killian Hayes. I'll
right?
take Killian Hayes. Man, I think Killian Hayes is a guy that needs a change of scenery. I think he's a guy that needs a change of scenery because I mean he's shown so many flashes,
Hmm.
and maybe playing for Dwayne Casey is not the easiest thing too. As we've known in his time in Toronto and thus far in Detroit as well. I think he needs a change of scenery.
You heard it here
I
first. Future Toronto Raptors
no,
guard
wait, I knew you were
Killian
gonna say that.
Hayes.
Hell no, hell no. He can go to Sacramento Kings. Bro. Go play for Mike Brown. I don't want you anywhere around Nick Nurse. No, thank you. Your confidence will get killed even more. Hell no. I don't want to see
Oh
him in a
my
Raptors jersey.
lord.
I hope you have a good career, Killian Hayes, just not in Toronto.
That's respectable. He hasn't really showed anything to, to nullify that, but
Yeah.
I think we'll skip on the Knicks side of it because we'll talk about the potential free agent market and how it's shaping out to be in a bit. But talk about this next trade. Wizards have ascertained. I don't even know if that's the right word. They have added Monte Morris and Will Barton, and the Nuggets have received contumacious Caldwell Pope. And if or when he does step on the floor for the Nuggets, the man that will own the record for the most NBA teams played for in ish. What do you think about that trade, Rube?
I actually like the deal for both teams because Denver clearly needed a boost defensively. KCP does that, and he shoots the three ball really well. I think the Wizards are gonna really like Monte Morris and sorry, brain fart here. Monte Morris
Will Bart.
and Will Barton, obviously both two really good offensive players. So that kind of shores up what they do there. Um, for me, this is sort of just like a lateral move, right? Like I think Denver wins this trade a little bit, just considering that Will Barton was almost unplayable in the playoffs, just considering he was such a defensive liability. And Monte Morris, obviously, a really good guard, but they're getting Jamal Murray back. So I think it's a good deal for Denver because they shore up their wing defense and their 3-point shooting, and that obviously plays a benefit to Nikola Jokic. You know, they can spread the floor a little bit more, just more threats on the perimeter, and the Wizards. Listen, if they lose Bradley Beal, I think they can still be a competitive team with Will Barton and Monty Morris alongside Porzingis and the young guys that they've got on that team. Um, but again, it's a lateral move. There's not much you can say about this one.
Then I think the only thing I really have to add is what I think this shows is that the Nuggets have a lot of faith in Bones High. It's not like it's misplaced either. I think Bones had a very underrated season. And obviously, you don't want to say the numbers are inflated or anything, but the absence of Jamal Murray obviously showed that he had a lot more opportunity than that team. And in the
Oh,
spurts that he did have,
yeah,
dog.
yeah. Look good. I would say more than an underrated season. I think he had a great season, dude. Nobody expected him to be in this situation. And he was awesome. Like he was awesome to end the year in the playoffs. He had some moments. Um, I, I like Bones Highland a lot,
Mm.
and so the fact that they decided to put all their trust into him and Jamal Murray in the backcourt speaks volumes. And I think there's a lot of teams now that just look so much more. They're just they're just smarter teams now. Like Denver has done a really good job drafting. They've done a really good job because they've never been a free agent destination, but they've done a hell of a job of being competitive every year, putting guys into their squad that helps them in some way, shape, or form. Like the Aaron Gordon trade that they made with Orlando, a year or
I
two
think
back.
that's a trade that they don't get enough credit for.
No, they don't. They sure as hell don't,
Aaron
and they
Aaron
should have.
Gordon was a DPOY candidate at one point during the season.
Dude, yes, that's what he's been great for Denver. Nikola Jokic, they built around him, and now you see what they're doing with this trade with KCP. KCP's won a championship. You get that veteran experience in your locker room, right? And you have him alongside Jamal Murray and Bones Highland. Like now they're wing defenders, and KCP and Aaron Gordon can guard. And so that's really important, especially when your point of attack, like Jamal Murray, isn't a great defensive guard, and Nikola Jokic, who's your backline in defense, isn't a great defensive player. So when your perimeter guys can go out and guard and stay one on one, at least for the most part, better than other perimeters can, like that's a huge benefit. And like I said, Monty Morris and Will Barton were great in their time in Denver. Especially for Will Barton, he's had a hell of a journey development wise and finding his way onto the court, becoming a really good NBA player. But almost nearly unplayable just because they're such defensive
Mm.
liabilities.
I think that and
So
you kind of went as far as you could with them on your.
exactly, 100%. So you're just utilizing the assets that you have, and you maximize the talent that you have around you, and so they've done that. So um, yeah, I think that again, lateral trade, but like there are some deeper meanings behind some things,
Mm.
right? And so I think this was a solid deal for mostly Denver, but I think for both teams that they'll find a benefit.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that and the player that the Nuggets drafted, Aidan Watson. Now, I don't know if I've said it before. If I were to pick a team as my team when it comes to college basketball, I like UCLA a lot. I mean, Johnny Juzang was one of my favorite players. Like watching like last year during the tournament, he kind of effed up his money, but we'll see what happens with that. But the dude they drafted in Peyton Watson, 6'8" with a crazy wingspan. He, I think, has a chance to really showcase and just have an opportunity that I don't think he really got with Mick Cronin's team. He didn't really play that much on the games that I did watch where he did play. Dude was solid, and we don't know what's going to happen with Michael Porter Jr. The back injury is always one of those very iffy ones. If obviously, I hope he is playing, but if by an unfortunate circumstance he's not, drafting a guy like Peyton Watson has a chance to, a lot like the Bones Highland pick, where you're picking late or the round, so you're obviously not going to get like a guy who's going to be a franchise cornerstone. You have the possibility to get is a dude who has a chance to really fit it. When it comes to like obviously Nikola Jokic, there's a reason he's the MVP. He makes everybody on the floor better. Yeah, man, calling it right here. gonna be a rematch of the first round, but potentially in the conference finals if Nuggets are fully healthy and if Jokic
Hmm.
is playing MVP level basketball. There's like genuinely, I would say off the top of my head, the conference finals is kind of a three-headed horse, three-headed three horse race kind of thing right now. Obviously, you got Golden State, the Clippers if they're healthy are in there, and if fully healthy, fingers crossed, everything goes according to plan. I think the Nuggets are finally gonna. That's another team. Okay, you know what, Rube? Just because that, and they drafted a guy that we're really rooting for in Jaden Hardy. Yeah, we'll say it's a four horse race.
Who do you think I was saying?
Mavericks. Oh no,
Thank you.
man.
Yes,
Oh,
no. You're right. You're right. You are right. I do like Memphis. Memphis looks good, but listen, do you see what? Did you see that picture of Luca?
he's
Did you see
looking
that picture of
good.
Luca?
Luca's looking good. He's looking.
I'm gonna stamp it right now. MVP Luka Doncic this
Yo,
year.
I was gonna say, I if there's a player that has a chance, like be a first time MVP next year, I think it's more
I
so
think
Luca than anybody else.
I think it's Luka. I think it's Luka. I think I said in a previous show before that I think Jason Tatum will be in that conversation. But after the year Luka had alone, sort of in a way,
That and the slow start he had.
yeah, yeah, and he looks cut, man. He looks great. So, anyways,
Give me a
hot
second.
take, hot take for that.
Hey, a hot take if it becomes true. Heading from there, let's talk about some free agents. Obviously, where the 4 year 120s and the 5 year $250 million deals are made. Talk about some of those guys. Bradley
Hey,
Beal.
DJ,
Yeah.
DJ, I we just need. There's one more trade we need to talk about.
Oh. What?
DeJounte Murray
Oh my gosh.
to the
How could I?
Atlanta Hawks.
Oh my
Don't worry, I
goodness.
got you, baby. This is
Yo,
what I'm here for.
my bad.
As y'all know,
A little
Danilo
backstory.
Gallinari, 3 first-round picks
Yeah.
for DeJounte
Oh my
Murray.
goodness. How could I? Oh, a casual man. Voila.
No,
Little
you're not.
back.
I got you. This is what I'm here for, baby. I got you.
I was in the middle of the class when I saw that notification and I almost screamed, "What the fuck?" So loud in class. I mean, prove it. Considering you're the one that mentioned it, let me hear your thoughts first and foremost.
First of all, pennies to the dollar. I think this
100%.
very clearly the Spurs are conducting a fire sale, right? They go of Derek White and Thaddeus Young at the trade deadline. From what I understand, is they are looking to shop Jakob Pertl, and clearly they're just trying to accumulate as many assets as they can so that they can score out on Victor Wembanyama for next year's draft. And he looks like an incredible talent. Looks like a generational player already, just with his size and ability.
He's Rudy Gobert if he could shoot. Same
Yeah,
work ethic, yeah.
exactly. And we all know about the Spurs' track record to develop a player, and you see that in DeJounte Murray, who's now heading over to Atlanta. I love this for Atlanta. Simply because number one, they didn't lose John Collins. But from what I understand, they are still shopping John Collins. I think that partnership is already over. I think there's mutual interest in both teams to end that. So John Collins is a really good player right now, but they're looking for someone who can be a win now a situation. So we'll see what that player looks like. Clearly, they're going to need to shore up the front line because Clint Capella has been quite injury prone as of late. So we'll see who that player is if they decided to deal John Collins. But getting to the meat and bread of this deal, the fact now is I think Atlanta might have just put together the best backcourt in the NBA. Because again, if your backcourt are two all stars, and again, DeJounte Murray was a replacement all star, but he shouldn't have been because I mean, dude, the dude is averaging a near triple double this year, right? And so he placed that alongside of Trey Young. Trey Young can play a lot more off the ball, which he's really good at catch and shoot. People don't talk enough about his ability to catch and shoot. Um, So you move Trae Young off ball a little bit more. That opens up a lot more for your offense when your point of attack and your best 3-point shooter isn't being blitzed right off the bat once he crosses half. So that's a huge benefit for your team offensively. You can game. It's very hard to game plan around that. And Dejounte Murray is one of the best versatile players in the league. Pretty much the Russell Westbrook of what he was. Right, his ability to defend, his ability to rebound, push the pace, create offense for others. And I really do like him in the pick and roll action. And Clint Capella is as good as there is in the pick and roll. So yeah, I love this deal for Atlanta. I obviously don't love it for the Spurs, just value wise. Like it seems like Gallinari is also not going to be sticking around with San Antonio, and what I believe I saw is Boston is interested in him. So I mean, there's a number of other steps that I've seen across that are happening off this trade, but this is a good step in the right direction because it was getting to the point where okay, how much can Atlanta win with this core? Right? They made a number of deals this season. It looks like they weren't done, and they added Dejounte Murray, who's again a really young talent. People like he's a young dude. Like is he not 25 years old? The dude is still young and right in his prime.
He's either 25 or like just turned 20. He's right
So
about to hit.
exactly, and so you pair that with Trae Young. Anytime you have really good backcourt play, you're typically going to be an elite. You're going to be an elite contender or an elite basketball team. And so I was on team break this shit up just considering like Atlanta was very much stuck in cruise control with this roster. Right, they had a really good year last year, and then this season they fell off the boat really hard. But then you add Dejounte Murray. They're looking good, man. I really love this deal for Atlanta as much as I hate that team. Um, and I don't like Trae Young, but you got to speak the facts and you got to respect it at the end of the day. So
Yeah, 100%. Uh, I would just like the world to know when the Hawks did go on the run they went on that year that this man won his first title. Prior to that, I called, this was before any podcast, any idea that was a thing. I called that I think that this team feeling is conference years later. Bogdanovich, that situation. This team, I think, not necessarily in just this one move. We'll see what happens with the fact that you're saying that it's the best backcourt duo, or even in the entire NBA, speaks to the fact that the Atlanta Hawks are going to be contending. I said it. We'll see how like this duo performs together. I don't think there's any doubts in my mind. It's two guys that average nearly 20 and 10 apiece. Now, obviously, you mentioned that he averaged triple double, but Ray has one, a nice big guard to play alongside with who can play defense, and two, another guy who has a chance or who can comfortably handle the ball. Bogdanovich is great, no doubt about that. He's a great option off your bench, but I think when he was coming to this situation, he was more expected to be a ball handler. He can to an extent, but it's like not even comparable when it comes to DeJounte Murray. And I think Trae Young is going to unlock a whole nother side of his game, and him being able to operate off ball is, I think, the next step into his game. But the only reason he hasn't really been able to get to that because he's never really played with a guy who would allow him to do that, because there's never been a player that he's played with that can comfortably handle that ball, to the level that Trae Young can. I'm just so excited. I'm on the verge of buying a DeJounte Murray Hawks shirt. Trae Young is going to catapult even further than he already is. I mean, frankly though, I will say, I do hope John Collins does stay. Just full disclosure, actually not full disclosure. Yeah, I hope he stays because what him and Trey have is like is a special connection, I think. Adding DeJounte Murray to that, whew,
Yeah.
man's about to average 25, man.
Yeah, totally forgot the fact that they have Bogdan on this team too, right? So
Not only that, you got DeAndre Hunter, super solid wing. He not gonna lie, he was the best player in that Miami series.
he
Uh,
was.
Kevin Herter, who is gonna be fully in that sort of spot up like position now, which I think is what he's best suited for, anyways. Sharif Cooper, no, he's obviously not gonna play, but yeah, the Hawks got a squad on their head. It's gonna be exciting. I know. There's one party that's super excited. It's the Magic City Girls. I'll say that.
Dead.
All right, now talk about some free agency or free agent talk. I will talk about big fish on the market. Bradley Beal. He's declined his player option. Ruben, if you're the Wizards or Bradley Beal, what are you doing?
If I'm the Wizards, obviously I throw the bag at him. I think I would say it's a 80-20 that Bradley Beal re-signs with the Wizards for a longer term deal and for a little bit more money. And he's obviously talked about it so much, how much he loves Washington, how much he loves being there. But then also he's talked about how much he would regret it if he didn't give himself a chance to win. The thing is, there aren't very many teams that can sign him outright, so it has to be a sign and trade. Um, and the other problem with that as well is I don't know how many teams would be willing to part assets because of the fact that teams that are going to want Bradley Beal are going to be teams that want to keep the assets that they have to give up in order to make that sign and trade work. It's not a situation like Toronto where they gave up Kyle Lowry and they were able to get back a Precious Achua, a Goran Dragic, which they eventually turned into a Thaddeus Young. It doesn't feel like the assets can be pieced together in that sense. Um, Now, can it work? Yes. The team that comes to my mind that's going to be a big player in free agency this year, where they will have to give up some of their assets, but will probably likely have to do it anyways because they want to be big players, is Portland. Whether it's Zach Levine or Bradley Beal, they're going to be the biggest players in the market. The Knicks as well, obviously. Um, but I have full expectation that Bradley Beal is likely going to re-sign with Washington, and I'll be a little bit shocked if he doesn't. But also happy for him because I think he'll finally give himself a chance to win.
And I mean, pretty hard to turn down 5 years, $250 million.
It's tough, man. It's tough. You can't. You can win it. If you had the chance to say, "Oh, I regret not winning a championship," or saying, "Oh, I regret not making $250 million," I'd rather say, I'll take the money and run, right? Because that's generational wealth. That affects your family, your kids, your kids' kids,
Kids'
versus
kids. Yeah, no,
yeah,
100%.
versus the fact that Bradley Beal's legacy is already set in stone. He's one of the best scorers to come into the league. He's a great shooting guard. He's been an NBA All Star. Will he be a Hall of Famer? I'm not sure. He won't be a first ballot at least, but he's going to be a name where you bring him up and you say, "Oh man, Bradley Beal, he was a dog." Oh man, like you talk about, you say the same thing about guys like Steve Francis. You say the same thing about guys like T Mac. You say, these are names you talk about back and forth. Like, man, these were great players, right? So, you know, if I were Bradley Beal, I take the 5 year, $250 million because I mean that's money that you just can't pass up at the end of the day, right?
And not only that, I think people are acting like this is the last contract he's ever gonna get. Like after this contract, he's out, kind of thing. But he's what, 29, I think. So
Yeah,
he'll be what, 33, 34. Now obviously he's not going to be the kind of player he was when he was like 27 averaging 30, but we're at the point where, what's the recovery and all that stuff is at like an advanced level to where 33 won't be like 33, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I think even after this contract, I think he's still gonna be a guy that can average not 30, obviously, but a solid 20, I'll say. So
Yeah,
even after this contract, I think he'll still have a chance to be uh what's it called, a contributor on a contender. And we've seen guys, Mitch Richmond, you know,
yeah,
always was in kind of that limbo situation, and now he had a chip in his last year. Gary Payton won one when
yeah.
he was older. You know, I 100% would take the money, but I just think it's all being blown out of proportion that acting like this guy's gonna retire after this.
Yeah, and the thing about Bradley Beal is his game has never been predicated on his athleticism, right? He's always been a really good,
Dribble
versatile,
pull up.
talented. Yeah, I mean, his game is an old man game, right? I mean, he could finish over guys, and is having that boost of athleticism is really nice, but he's got a bag, right? And that thing carries with you for a really long time. And Bradley Beal's got that type of game where he could go into his mid 30s and still be a contributor, like you mentioned. So, say he takes the 5 years, opts out in year five with that player option, which is most likely what's going to get offered. He'll be 33, 32 by the time that he gets his next, or sorry, yeah, 33, 34 by the time he gets his next contract. I mean, he can still contribute, right? So, yeah, man. I mean, take the money and go. It is what it is.
Andy. Yeah,
It's not like he
well,
can't compete either. Like he's got Porzingis on his team now, and it looks like it's a better
Kyle
fit now.
Kuzma had a career year last
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah.
Then you have
It's
Diaz proving to be one of the better defending wings.
exactly. So I mean, it looks like a team that's growing with its young core. So it's not like this team can't be competitive, right? It's better to be a competitive team, make boatloads of money, generational wealth, and go from there rather than you know doing what Kyrie Irving did or could have done is leaving whatever $40 million on the table and signing $6 million to LA because he wants to win. Like no one's going to do that. No one is going to do that. No one's going to do
Shout out to Boogie.
that.
All right.
Huh.
Kind of the. Yeah, no, we'll talk about this. Zach Levine, in my opinion, I think it's a similar thing where he's more than likely going to resign. You know, obviously the season didn't end how you would have wanted it to, but if that team is healthy, if you look at the depth they have, Lonzo, Alex Caruso, Dalen Terry is another one of those like big guards who's a good 3-and-D player. Obviously, Zach Levine's heading up and like being the show headliner there. Mar DeRozan kind of not necessarily actually kind of resurrected, but showed that he is one of the top players in the league from his Toronto days. Vucevic, he can go. But aside from that, Patrick Williams, this team, I think it's too good of a core to not see what can happen if you have more time to gel together. But I do think he does stay and signs that 5-year max. What do you think about
Yeah,
Zach Levine?
yeah, I agree with that. The Portland stuff is as the talks about Portland and him have minimized a lot in the last few weeks, considering the options don't look great for him. Because again, it'll be a situation where if he wants to play with Dame, his assets will have to be given up in order for him to sign with Portland. And so, he might as well stay with Chicago, just get healthy. The team was a top four team when they were all healthy. So, I mean, stick with a team that you feel like you have a better chance with and sign that generational money, man. It is what it
Yeah.
is.
Talk about Jalen Brunson now. How do you feel about him being a future Knick?
Yeah, I think my silence is going to speak best for this. I'd rather Brunson stay with the Mavs, dude. I think like his game. There was a lot of discourse, and for some reason I was seeing it that people were saying things like, he's a better player than Fred VanVleet. Um, First of all, that's bullshit. Number two, uh, Brunson is a guy. He's not a lead guard. He's not a lead guard, right? He's a guy who can score and finish and create shots for others. but I don't know if I trust him to be the head of a snake of a team with very limited offensive options. You have RJ Barrett and Julius Randle, but they don't have that kind of shooting that Dallas had that opened up the floor for him to be successful. He didn't have another lead guard like Spencer Dinwiddie, where he could take the pressure off of him and break down a defense one on one. And then when Luka came in back from his injury, they obviously went running into the Western Conference Finals. So it's again, your success is how do I rephrase this better? You're a product of your environment, right? And Jalen Brunson was a positive product of being around a winning environment, right? And so a lot of guys get overpaid. I think this is one of those situations where a guy had a really good year on a contract year. He's going to get paid a crap ton to play for a terrible team, and he's going to show up. He's not going to have the same guys around him that allowed him to be successful in the situation that he was prior. And you're going to see him be like, okay, this guy is not as good as we thought we were, or as good as we thought he was. And that's simply because your team is also not good enough, or your team does not reflect what uh, he was so successful with in the past. So if I were Jalen Brunson, it seems like, obviously he has a chance to earn big time money, and it seems like he's going to get a 3 year, $100 million deal, which is freaking crazy because if he earns that type of money, he's not an all-star player. If he overpays, that's going to set a new precedence in the market, and guys who are like him are going to start demanding that kind of money, and that becomes a new benchmark, which again, it saturates the market, right? And guys are going to have to start overpaying for these mid-level players. So that's a problem all in itself. But I mean, that at the end of the day, if I was Jalen Brunson, I'm gonna run and take that money and play where I can have 40 minutes of playing time. I'm the lead guard, and nobody's gonna take my time, right? And I have the opportunity to showcase my skills and my ability and kind of go wings free. But if he really wants the opportunity to win and still make that good money, and for the betterment of the league from a market standpoint, you stay with Dallas because listen, where are you going to find another opportunity like this where you can be a running mate to Luka Doncic, right? And that guard tandem that they had between him, Dinwiddie, and Luka was so good, right? There's a reason they made the Western Conference Finals. They didn't just make it out of luck. It was a very good duo. It was a very good trio. Once everybody got healthy, so my my opinion is kind of mixed on this because like obviously as a player you have a different perspective versus what an organization wants, but I would love for him to stay in Dallas personally.
Hmm. I like how you bring up the market because I think that's something that's not necessarily being brought into the full conversation when you talk about Jalen Brunson's all very much is a loyal to the source. And I think the only thing I have to add that if he does join the Knicks, what I think it does opens up time for one of my favorite players or one of my favorite young guys that I hope is able to carve out a role in these next couple years. I think it's Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish is a guy who hasn't necessarily gotten the burn. Not that he's necessarily deserving, because in the time that he does play, it's it's hard to get a rhythm when you're not playing consistent minutes, and I think he's a product of that statement. But what having Jalen Brunson on your team does is kind of what we've seen with a lot of these teams that have a smaller lead guard. You got to surround them with a lot 6'7", a lot. Jalen Brunson, Cam Reddish, Arthur Barrett, Julius Randle, and hopefully if he does resign, Mitchell Robinson. All of that just to go 41-41 and losing the play-in probably. But Cam Reddish will get his play time.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be nice to see him get some playing time, even though he's been in Thibodeau's doghouse. I also think they need a coaching change, but that's a different conversation for another time. I don't know why you put Cam Reddish, one of your most promising guys, in the doghouse, and he didn't even want him to be there in the first place. And I'm like, well, as a coach, your ability is to bring the best out of the guys that you get on your roster and your ability to develop them. And so if you can't do that, um, I think that you aren't fit for this position. This how I feel because we've seen coaches where the best coaches of all time, Eric Spoelstra, Steve Kerr, Nick Nurse, Greg Popovich, go all the way back to Phil Jackson, Pat Riley. These guys were able to help develop players over time to where they can get back to an environment of winning. Steve Kerr did it the past 2 years with all those young players, and look where they are now. They just won a championship after going on a really dynastic run. Eric Spoelstra, same thing. They had a lull between the LeBron era and now. They had, Greg Popovich. How many years has he spent winning talent and developing players, even though they haven't been very good? Freaking the Spurs made the freaking play-in.
Yeah, that was
Like the
that's a
Spurs made the
testament
freaking
to how
play-in.
amazing Greg Popovich.
Exactly. And Nick Nurse has done this like every year now, right? Where he takes a roster and he maximizes their ability to perform. So if Tom Thibodeau can't do that, then why are you a head coach? Because your job is to coach, and that's a big part of that is the development of your players. So if you can't get the best out of your players and your roster that you have in front of you, and you can't develop them, why are you a head coach? That's just my personal opinion.
Oh,
It's not like Thibodeau's a
that's
bad coach
valid,
either, but
valid. But alrighty, heading from there, let's talk about not yeah. Let's kind of like wrap this little thing on a bow. Ruben, with free agency happening tomorrow at I think like 12 o'clock. Who are some players you're hoping to throw some money at?
so I've got three. Number one's Tyus Jones. He's an unrestricted free agent, and I think that shores up your backcourt. If you can't sign him, do I think he can be available for an MLE? Maybe. Another guy I really like is Amir Coffey. He's a restricted free agent in the Clippers, so I think just considering how much money they're going to be burning on this roster, he's a young guy that I really like who can shoot the three. He obviously can defend, has got size. I really like him on the Raptors. I think he just fits perfectly to what they do, and then obviously he can develop. Um, and another name that I did have on here was actually uh, here I had it written down. Another guy that I really do like is Jesus. Where is it? I had it. Malik Monk. I wanted him last year on the Raptors in the offseason, and his ability to score. And he's young, dude, but I think Malik Monk will actually go and take another small salary, which I think he can make so much more from another team. And I think he can actually provide that scoring presence that the Raptors need off the backcourt. So for me, it's like since we've already answered that through the draft, it would be nice if we can get some good wing play, shooting, and reliable guard depth. So any one of those three is for me, which I think Toronto should focus on. I believe Thaddeus Young will resign from what I was seeing for a 2-year, $10
That's
million
huge.
deal. I do like that. I like him coming back. Obviously, Boucher's status is up in the air. I would like to see Boucher back, but at the same time, I think Boucher can make a lot more money from a different situation. And personally, there is a bit of a logjam at the bigs. If you've still got Kem Birch, Precious Achua, Pascal Siakam,
Just
and then you
invested a
want to
pick into
exactly right. So you are looking at a logjam at the big spot. And considering how the Raptors play almost positionless, I think Boucher's had his run with Toronto, and even though he had a really good second half, he was awful in the first half. Really good second half of the season. I think Boucher's going to be looking for a raise, right? And I don't think Toronto's got that kind of money. And again, like we just mentioned, Thaddeus Young is going to be a guy who's been playing small five and four a lot this year too, and who will continue to do that. So I think he's just kind of the odd man out when it comes to free agency. So Yeah, I think they want to throw some money at one of those three guys, like I mentioned in your coffee, Malik Monk or Tyus Jones. I think Tyus Jones is at the top of my list because we saw how good he was with Memphis, especially when John Morant went down. Right, like he's a reliable dude, can shoot the ball, doesn't turn the ball over, can defend, can pretty much do everything on the court. Really an extension of the coach. And so we need more guys like that on Toronto. And I think Malachi Flynn's time is up too in Toronto. So I'd like to see Tyus Jones in Toronto.
Sorry. Uh, breaking news. Miles Bridges is apparently arrested for. Sorry, that
What?
I don't even know if that's
Where'd you see it from?
underdog NBA. Um,
Oh, I just saw a tweet about it too.
dang. Right before. I don't want to say right before you get it back because that shit's true, man. Miles Bridges.
Wow, man. Did he really just wow?
He really.
Oh, can I just throw this out there? One free agent that I did forget to talk about is DeAndre Ayton, and his name has been
Oh
start coming
shoot!
around
Why are we?
Toronto for a minute. Well, his name has been involved in talks with Toronto,
He
and from what
leaving?
I understand, he ain't leaving.
No, he's leaving.
Oh yeah,
He's
he's
leaving
leaving. He's
Phoenix.
leaving. From what I understand, a potential sign and trade is there, and OG Anunoby would be headed on the way out if that's the case. Um, and as much as I like OG, gotta take Aiton.
I respect that.
He's one of the best centers in the league, right? And if you can get a guy like him on the Raptors, I think he fits perfectly to what they want to do. So from what I understand, from what I've been reading, there has been talks between Toronto still looking for a center. They actually reached out regarding Gobert. Utah's asking price is way too high. And so the next peg down has been Aiton, who I think Aiton's actually better than Gobert in my opinion. And so there's a potential there for it. And let me just throw this out there. If Kyrie Irving doesn't want to stay in Brooklyn, Kevin Durant, you can come play for your favorite team. You can come play for your favorite basketball team in Toronto. OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr., I will gladly drive you both to Brooklyn myself.
Oof. I know what clip I'm uploading later. Dang. I respect that. Yeah, I quickly on the topic of DeAndre Ayton. What are you doing, Phoenix? They'll talk about how much you appreciate this man, how much he's an integral piece to your like potential championship hopes. How could you not give him the money? I mean, he is literally number one. He was a number one overall pick. Number two, he's your like third best player, was sometimes your second best players during certain series. I mean, not only that, when I saw him start to shoot threes, like even if it was just one a game, that started to scare me a bit. Oof.
Yeah.
Hey,
Get him in a Raptors jersey, man.
if if Phoenix is good at one thing, choking. Now,
Damn.
we'll
Damn,
transition
damn,
to the
damn.
team that took him down and came down from 2-0. Uh, if there are three free agents I'd like the Bucks to target, well, even prior to that, I think the start of the offseason for the Bucks has been incredibly stellar. Obviously, Marjan Beauchamp's the newest Buck. I'm super excited for that. But Pat Connaughton being a real one, and on a chance that he really had the opportunity to cash in on like the season he had. I mean, can you think of players where they break their shooting hand, they come back in the same season, and their shooting looks better? That doesn't really happen that much. I mean, when he came back, his form was like it was still the same, which was super solid, but he was shooting it and getting it up a lot quicker. So Pat Connaughton's a real one. He could have cashed in, but he accepted his $5 million player option. Can't say the same about Bobby Portis, but low key, I think you can tell. I don't want to say casual because I hate having that kind of disconnect, but I think you can really tell someone's kind of understanding like that side of basketball when the second they see the word decline, they automatically assume they're jumping ship. Bobby is obviously not going to leave. That dude's the mayor of Milwaukee. He's going to have his jersey retired when he's there. But he deserves his payday. The numbers I'm hearing is 4 years around the $40 million range, and I think I'll pay that 10 out of 10 times. Bobby Portis is the heart and soul of that team, and I don't think there's a. I think it's similar to like Klay Thompson, where I don't think he'll play for another team. Fingers crossed. But the three players I would like to see the Bucks target. Number one, Gary Harris. Now,
Good
Gary
one.
Harris is coming off of making a crazy $50 million bag, where he was touted to be one of those premier 3-and-D wings. Had a bit of an injury issue, but I think potentially seeing him in the Bucks uniform would be very nice. He had some spurts obviously in the Magic, but with that team kind of more having a priority on their young Bucks, uh, Gary Harris, get him on a veteran team. Veteran team could be the Bucks. Number two, Avery Bradley, the guy that, according to, I forgot which podcast I was listening to, but it might have been $1 million worth of game, but the guy that apparently resulted in was it whether it was Rondo or whoever kind of getting mad and leaving the Celtics? Or no, it was Ray Allen. And Ray Allen leaving the Celtics. Avery Bradley, premium 3-and-D guard, kind of speaks for itself. He's always had that reputation of being super solid when it comes to that. And number three, with this gonna kind of sound counterproductive because they're both old, but considering Brooke kind of had the year he did where it was one game in and like 60 plus games out kind of thing, I think JaVale McGee could prove to be a very solid, backup big. Obviously, he's like a 10-and-10 guy when he wants to be. He has the ability to be primary big man. Has got some curb blocking ability when it comes to that. And dude knows how to influence and have like a fun and winning culture. So I would love to see JaVale McGee in a Bucks uniform. But yeah, I mean, when you guys are listening to this, it'll probably be, if you're listening to it right at the time we upload, free agency is literally few hours away. I mean,
Mhm.
this is right before kind of the teams start to fully get set. I think it's outside of playoff basketball. I think free agency is the most exciting time of the. What about you, Ruben? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just love this is a time where everybody's most engaged, right, with conversations around the league. And I think even though there's nothing to actually watch, that's what builds the excitement, right? Because you're excited to see these guys on opening day. You're excited to hear about these guys joining their teams. Excited to hear about all the drama that happens, and seeing how these additions and all these subtractions play out in the course of a regular season and into the NBA playoffs. And we saw how that worked with a team like Golden State, right? Like, they weren't a team that made a whole lot of deals, um, but the combination of making deals in the long term, investing in a guy like Andrew Wiggins, investing in a guy like Jordan Poole, being deciding to wait out on playing Wiseman, and then you see that and same thing with the Mavericks where they acquired Spencer Dinwiddie and they ended up being one of the top teams in the league, right? And so it's just fun. It's just fun, when you see um, moves being made, names being tossed around, drama. It's the excitement of the league, man. There's nothing like it, and I think the NBA is the most exciting at what it does. It's the best league at being interesting away from the games. So, um,
That's a very
this
good
is
way of
really
putting
exciting.
it. Well
Yeah,
said. All right, to end it off, Ruben, who do you think is going to win free agency this year, Shams or Woj?
I think I'll run with Woj, man. I'll run with Woj. Just too big of a
You gotta
name,
respect the OG.
and yeah, I mean, there's been a few times where he's been burned by Shams throughout the year, but Woj has been 90%, 95% like the top flight guy this year. So we'll see, man. Even during the draft, they were both saying wrong stuff.
I-
So, and then there's guys like Chris Haynes who doesn't know what he's talking about. So, you know,
That being said, we hope you guys enjoy the free agency period for your respective teams. Hopefully you guys sign all the players, unless your team's like the Thunders and Magic. But with that being said, this has been another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. Stay safe, stay blessed. See y'all soon.
peace.
Back shots, back shots.
Back shots, back shots.